night may be long and the dark may be deep, but the answers are there to be found. Whether it's the normal, the abnormal, or the paranormal, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond reality.
We're going to be talking about demonic activity, negative energies, negative activity, negative attachments, possessions, all of that with our guest Jeffrey Seelman tonight. He is a clearing expert, an exorcist, and an author. And he spends his life helping people with spiritual energy problems and helping people under attack by negative or demonic spirits. So we'll have that conversation with Jeffrey as we continue tonight. Welcome to another week of programs, everyone. It's great to have you along with us. We had a fun and exciting episode of Booze, Brews, and Bros on Friday night. I hope those of you who are with us enjoyed it, had a good time, and recovered. I don't think Rocco recovered right away, but I think he's okay now. It was a good time. A lot of fun. We played a little password. If I remember correctly, I won. You can verify that for me in chat, but I'm pretty sure I won. In fact, I think I had the scorecard here that Rocco had contested all night, but we know the truth, don't we? What else? Oh, we've got some great stuff coming up this week, too. I just want to go through our list. We've got Ronnie Dawson coming back with us tomorrow night. He was here about a year ago, and he was telling us his UFO. I'm starting laughing a little bit because I'm reading chat, and you're reminding me of some of the antics from Friday night's program. Ronnie Dawson was telling us his UFO encounter, alien encounter story about a year ago, and we had to rush him at the end because we ran out of time. But we promised to bring him back so that he could tell the story in more detail. And he is coming back tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to that. We promised him we would do that in our schedule, just didn't work out until now. So that's tomorrow's program. Wednesday, Jeff Jowett will be here to talk about soul regression. What happens to the soul? What's it all about? And then Thursday, a bit of a departure from our paranormal topics. We're going to be talking about symbolism in movies with Robert Sullivan. A little bit of a pop culture look at things. So that'll be fun. Again, great week of programs here on Beyond Reality. One of the things that we should talk about, because if you remember, and you probably have heard this, it's been posted all over Facebook and other social media, but I don't know what it was. A year ago, 2 years ago, we ran a story here about an amateur rocketeer who, at the time, it was said he was a flat earther. He believed that the earth was flat, and he was building a rocket to be able to fly high enough that he could actually prove his theories about whether the earth was flat or not. And he had talked about launching this rocket several times. It keeps coming up in the news. Well, he finally did launch his rocket. Sadly, it ended in tragedy, and Mad Mike Hughes is his name, lost his life. He was attempting to get to 5,000 feet with a homemade steam-powered rocket. And the rocket, as it took off, immediately lost its parachute, which I believe was there in order to help him land safely, but it ripped off right in the beginning of the launch. And then the rocket falls through the air and crashes into the ground in the desert. And obviously everybody at the scene was gasping. According to one eyewitness, Justin Chapman, when the rocket was nosediving and he didn't release the 3 other parachutes he had in the rocket, a lot of people started screaming and wailing. Everyone was stunned when he crashed and didn't know what to do. And those of you who are watching on the YouTube channel, I am actually going to play this video so you can see what happened. Let me see if I can make it work here. It's a little more complicated than normal, but yeah, this is the video. If you're watching on the YouTube channel now, you're seeing a video off of YouTube of the launch of the rocket, and then you see it come crashing down. See, right when it immediately takes off, the parachute comes off. It goes up a ways, and then it just comes falling back to Earth in a nosedive. And all the onlookers were obviously mortified and beside themselves, and it crashes on the ground. And, of course, you don't survive that. So our hats off to somebody who truly believed in what they were doing, and sadly it ended in tragedy, and obviously a real painful time for his family. And our hearts go out to them. But I felt it was important to update you about that because we've talked about not just flat Earth, but we've talked about this gentleman and his efforts to go up high enough to get enough altitude that he could determine whether or not his theories were correct. So he was a pioneer. All right. Well, welcome to everybody in our chat room. Our chat room, by the way, is part of our YouTube channel. If you have not found our YouTube channel, just go to YouTube and search for JV Johnson, and you'll find it. And when you find it, please subscribe. Become part of our YouTube community. That number is growing constantly. Thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed and supports the channel. It's really important to get numbers and more people and more participation. So if you're already a subscriber and you're already aware of the YouTube channel, share it with your friends, share it on your social media pages, let people know about it, and invite everybody to our group. We're an open group. Anybody is welcome to come. So we invite everyone to do that. Also, the podcast is available throughout all major podcast distribution points, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. So you can find it virtually anywhere. If you are traveling somewhere and you want to catch up on some shows, the podcast is a great way to do it. Play it right through your sound system in your car, through your Bluetooth connection, and you're good to go. That's what I do. I don't listen to my show, obviously, because I've already done it. But I listen to other shows, and that's how I get caught up a lot when I'm traveling. It makes the time go much quicker. Plus, I learn stuff. Right? Great combination. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're bringing in our guest. Again, tonight we're talking about demonic activity, negative energy, and negative activity. Our guest, Jeffrey Seelman, is a clearing expert, an exorcist, and an author. And that's all ahead right here on Beyond Reality. Don't go away. Please support the program. Go to patreon.com/Johhaw. That's JOHAW. You know, a lot of times when you're a paranormal investigator, you're a ghost hunter, you're asked about negative entities and demonic activity. And most ghost hunters won't even touch the category. In fact, if they think that they're investigating a property that has some type of negative energy or a demonic possession of some kind, smartly so, they walk away and tell the person involved that they need to get help from a professional. Well, tonight we've got one of those professionals with us. Jeffrey Seelman is a clearing expert, an exorcist, also an author, and he spends his life helping people with spiritual energy problems and helping people under attack by negative or demonic entities or spirits. Jeffrey, welcome to Beyond Reality. Great to have you here tonight.
Great to be here, JV.
You do some pretty incredible work under some pretty incredible circumstances, and we're going to get into all that. But before we do, how long have you been part of this world, if you will? How long have you been doing this?
I was born with psychic abilities. I was born in 1959, and I was able to see spirits when the wind was right, meaning not all the time. I saw them very often when I was very young, in school, elementary school, and beyond. And I thought everybody could see spirits. I thought it was something that everybody was doing, and evidently the teachers felt very differently, and so did my classmates, and it did not go over too well. That's how I started.
Yeah.
You know?
When you, you were born with much of this sensitivity. Do you remember yourself being sensitive at that point in your life? I mean, you were an infant, obviously, or do you now look at it in retrospect and now you understand what was going on?
I always knew I was different because when I reported seeing spirits to the teachers and my parents and my classmates, they had no idea what I was talking about, and actually reacted rather in a negative way. And so I made no friends early on in school. We're talking, first, second grade, elementary,
right, here
in the United States. So I was also able to tell my mother things like, Grandma's going to call at 8:20 a.m. tomorrow morning. And though that part of it, I didn't remember so much. Later on, when my mom and I, were adults, she would tell me stories of the things that would happen. When I was 4 years old, I woke up and there were two aliens in my bedroom. And so I remember I had a routine physical a couple of years ago, and my this doctor said to me, she said, Jeffrey, you think that you may have been sleeping? And I said, I wasn't until they woke me up.
When you were growing up and you were telling your friends, you turned to a friend and say, hey, do you see that person standing over there? And of course they didn't. Or, you tell a teacher, there's somebody over in the corner that I can kind of see through. And the teacher thought, oh boy, we've got to send this child to the nurse. What was going on in your mind? I mean, were you frustrated by that or did it scare you?
Good question, JV. Early on, again, in first, second, third grade, what happened was that I'd be in a classroom with about maybe 30 people, and I would see maybe 3 spirits in there. They looked a little bit different, meaning that they weren't quite completely solid, just a little bit transparent. And say 2 of them would be standing above a student. I got the feeling at the time that they were actually trying to help them with their studying. Like they were trying to transmit telepathic thoughts, here's how you do that problem, Jimmy.
To the other students, you're saying? They were doing this to the other students, you felt?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I felt.
Okay.
And then there was always one in the classroom when this was happening that seemed to be looking at me and saying, I could just feel it. You shouldn't be seeing me, and they'd attack me. Essentially, they'd come after me. I'd run out of the classroom occasionally even. I didn't know what they were because now we're talking 1963, 1964. And so essentially that it just wasn't really talked about. And so what I'm saying is that most of the spirits that I encountered were really, I thought, very positive. I didn't even know they were spirits. I wasn't sure what they were.
Right.
And so, but there was always one that seemed to be kind of roaming around the classroom and I think amplifying or aggravating at least one student, if not more. And they sure could see that I saw them and they didn't like it, and so they decided to take advantage of that and sort of come at me. Now, spirits don't need to walk. They can actually kind of just move from one place to another, so it was real scary. Yeah. I did not know what it was at first, and of course I'd report it to the teacher, maybe not right then and there, but afterwards, and then to my parents. And I really had no friends the first 3 years of, first grade, second grade, third grade, that kind of thing. And I simply learned to not speak about it. And so by 4th grade, I had a lot of friends because every year, as you know, it changes. You go, summer comes, school's out, you go back, it's a whole new thing. And when I came back for 4th grade, I didn't talk about it at all. How I used, I did see these things in the classroom and other places as well, but I thought that what I would do is, one of the talents I have is, and I think maybe your listeners can relate to this, and viewers, that intuition. I would get these warnings in my head of trouble coming, of something that was about to happen. Not world events, just small little things that related to me or things that were happening around me. If you'd like to know, when I was going to high school, I went to high school from 1974 to 1978. Then I went into the Air Force after that. But the kids would use me essentially when they'd go outside and smoke cigarettes, or back then a little marijuana, right outside on a busy street. I went to a high school that was on a corner of 2 busy streets. So we'd be outside, and sometimes they'd actually ask me to come outside because I would get a 15-second or 30-second warning that somebody was going to come out that door, either a teacher or the vice principal, who's always trolling around looking for something. And I would just simply say, run. And lo and behold, every single time that a teacher or the vice principal, or even once in a while the principal, would come out the door and say, hey, you kids, what are you doing? It's pretty obvious what we were doing, but by then we were already running away and gone.
So I bet those students that may have shunned you in 2nd and 3rd grade certainly welcome those abilities at that point. You saved their skin a few times with it.
I should have charged them,
Yeah, you should
maybe,
have.
but and sometimes I was involved in it, but I think that we never talked about it. We never talked about it. It was just something like, bring Jeffrey out. Jeffrey seems to know when the teachers are going to be at the door. He'll tell you ahead of time. But we never talked about it, and we never called it psychic ability, or it was just, I guess, maybe kind of uncomfortable. It was just like, for some reason, Jeffrey knows when the teacher's coming out, whether he hears them, whether he gets a feeling. They didn't know, and I didn't really want to talk about it.
Right.
The main thing was not to get caught.
I want to go back to the classroom. When you were at a point when you did talk about it, and nobody accepted what you were saying. You say you'd see 2 or 3 of these spirits in the classroom, and you felt like they were trying to affect a student and help them, I suppose, with a problem or with whatever they were working on. Do you feel like those spirits were there specifically for the specific student they were trying to help? Like, was there a connection there, or was there a connection to the school to those spirits? Was it something to do with the school itself?
I'm completely convinced, because I remember it very vividly, that the spirits were probably the spirit guides of the individuals, because they never switched students, meaning that they weren't walking around and helping students. They would actually stand behind the students and kind of look at what they were looking at, and sometimes even kind of touch them on maybe with using their energy fields. The students would not be aware of this, and I really had the feeling, even at the time, that they were simply trying to transmit maybe some information if the student was having some problems with the different kinds of mathematical things or reading or whatever we were working on that the teacher had us working on. So, and they wouldn't move to a different student. So that would tell me that they were there for that student. That did not frighten me. It was really just the other ones that were, and usually just 1 or 2, that were they were moving around.
Yeah.
And I also got the feeling that they were attached to particular students, meaning that there were certain students in a classroom that maybe, we all had this experience where they didn't really like me. And so sometimes I felt they might have been connected with them, but that wasn't the problem. It was just that they would look directly at me and kind of like, you're not supposed to see me, I don't like it, and so I'm going to have some fun with you. And that means come at me. I mean, kind of traverse across the room right between people. They didn't have to go around people,
right.
Right at me. And, of course, I would react because I did not know what they were. I thought everybody could see these things. I just didn't talk about it much, and then I talked about it later with the teachers and say, who are these people? Who are these beings that these creatures, these men in the classroom or women, that were helping people, and it was like, what are you talking about?
When you say they attacked you, did they ever touch you, or did they ever make some kind of psychic attack on you, or was it just that they came at you and that was enough to scare you?
The attack was usually that they were just staring at me and then moving around me, and that would frighten me enough. And so I didn't always perceive what they were thinking, but they felt creepy and angry and not serious, and that they were there to disrupt things. Where the other spirits were not even paying attention to me and only paying attention to the students that they were helping. And it was never me. And so it was always, I just kind of watched it sometimes, like the 1 or 2 spirits, and it was different spirits in different classrooms. They would not like it that I could see them. And so that's kind of how things began with me and spirits. And so finally, I thank God, that there were some. My mother was pretty strict with television. She was very modern, but adult stuff she didn't like. But she did let me watch certain science fiction things. And because of that, even though I was very young, I did realize that some people were different. That's what I got out of things like the Twilight Zone and other things like that, was that there are weird things happening in this world. My parents were actually more disturbed about me telling them things that were going to happen in the immediate future. And it was, like I said, it was always small stuff, JV. It was always, someone's going to call at 9:20, that kind of thing. It was no world event, no apocalyptic talk. Just simple things. That was enough to really frighten my father. My mother took it in stride. She was kind of like, well, thanks, because it would happen.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll get ready for the phone call tomorrow. But I think she was psychic herself, and she understood. When I woke up in the middle of the night and there were two aliens in my bedroom wearing electronic devices on their uniforms, it scared the whatever out of me, and so. She believed me. She said, I believe you. This is the kind of stuff that happens to you, Jeffrey, I was 4 years old. And it started that early. And looking back, JV, I really believe I felt no negative intentions from these two aliens. They were clearly aliens. They looked like aliens. They were small. They had strange faces. The room, I always kept my door open a little bit. So there's a little bit of light going on. I thought it was two giant eyes, like a spider. I don't know what it was.
Let's come back.
And then when my eyes cleared a little bit, I sat up real quickly, and then I saw that it was actually two small beings who were dressed exactly the same way, and they had electronic gear on their chests, and they were glowing, but they were not glowing in my eyes. They were like self-illuminating. And so I just kind of noticed that. And one of them, I was very frightened at first. I thought, what was going on? And then one of them moved around to the side of my bed, and I got a clearer look, and I realized it was just two of them, not two eyes, but actually two beings with electronic devices on their chest, which actually interested me the most, even though they did not look human at all. And what really interested me, and always has, is that they had some really neat electronic devices that glowed on their chest, and what it did, I do not know.
Jeffrey, I want to take you back. I'm going to come back to the alien discussion in a minute, but I want to know, the school you went to, was that a public school or was it a parochial school of some kind?
It was a public school in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and here's something interesting, JV. It was the same school that both my mother and father went to, even though they did not know each other at that time.
Oh, wow.
So it was an older school, a large brick building, was very nice, but it was actually old, and old enough for my parents to go there when they were young and go through elementary school. It was just grades 1 through 6 here in the United States. And so it was a public school, and it was not affiliated. As a matter of fact, I grew up in a suburb that was not particularly religious. They had a lot of different kinds of people who belonged to different kinds of religion, and because of that, we didn't discuss it too much, because there were people there who were Catholic and Protestant, and we had a couple evangelical-type people. Baha'i faith, one girl from the Baha'i faith, a lot of Jewish people. And when you have that kind of group around, you simply don't discuss it at all. And it wasn't even fashionable back in the 1960s, early on, when I was growing up, to discuss it at parties, block parties, when my neighbors had, or in school, because politics. Yeah. It just wasn't talked about because it was...
Were your parents particularly religious, or were you?
No. I was brought up Presbyterian until I was 8 years old. This would be about 1967. I went to Sunday school, got into a lot of trouble. My parents dropped out of it because they said it went political. I didn't ask them about it. I was 8 years old. They stopped going. I stopped going. My problem with the whole thing was that I questioned, when they would tell me things, I questioned it. Of course, I spent essentially 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, with teachers saying, ask questions, raise your hands. So I go into Sunday school, the parents will go into church, and the kids would go to Sunday school downstairs in the basement. And, of course, they'd tell us these things, and I would say, even at that young age, 5, 6, 7 years old, I would say, that makes no sense. To the Sunday school teacher, I said, you know what, that makes no sense.
They probably didn't take too kindly to that.
Not at all. They didn't like it at all because the questions I had were, and of course her answer was, you have to believe. And I said, no, I don't. I said that the teachers at the school say I should ask questions, and you'd provide an answer. Everybody would. Any teacher would. But you're saying just believe, and you don't have an explanation for it. And I was kind of on this kick about things like, well, two people were created, and I said that would make us all inbred. And, things that just didn't make any sense to me, and I wanted to know, well...
Sure, you wanted some answers. It seems natural.
I wanted some practical, scientific, logical explanations for what they were saying.
Let's go back to your...
They could not provide them. It was simply like, I know it doesn't make any sense, but just believe it. And I was like, no.
Yeah. Let's go back to the alien encounter. You said you were 4 years old?
Yes.
So you're 4 years old. These two figures appear in your bedroom. You're in bed, right? You're in bed for sleep.
Sleeping.
Yeah. And these two figures appear in your bedroom. There's enough light coming through the crack of the door or whatever that you can make them out. Do you think that those two creatures, you're calling them aliens, but do you think in some way they had a connection to the spirit world that you were seeing, or was it two completely independent events?
Good question. I knew that they were aliens because they had electronic lights on their chests, and none of the spirits that I ever saw had any kind of electronic lights or any kind of anything that would be glowing. They were just simply beings that I could partially see through, and they had clothing on. And it didn't look strange. They weren't robes or anything like that. It was pretty contemporary for the early 1960s. The difference being here was that these guys they were small. They were about maybe, I'd say, 4'5". They had weird-looking faces, and also the most important thing was, of course, they had the same outfits on, and also, they had some extremely interesting-looking electronic lights on their chests, and they were over their clothing, over their uniforms or whatever. And I knew right away, when they moved apart, that's kind of what drew my eyes, because I've always been drawn towards lights and technology, and that is my background as well. And so it was I was just fascinated by the lights. The whole thing went on. I was sleeping, and somehow I woke up. They didn't make a sound. What woke me up, I do not know, because they didn't make a sound even when they were moving. And they were not, I could not see through them. They really were there, right. And I kept on looking at the lights and wondering what they were, but I was also becoming more panicked.
Are you certain?
I was only 4 years old,
and
ended up running out of the room and into my mom's room and screaming,
sure.
"Mom, there's aliens in my bedroom! Help me!"
Are you certain that the lights were on their body and maybe just not some type of reflection of something else in the room or from outside the room?
No, because when one of them moved over to the side of my bed, which I believe was deliberate, because when I first saw them, they were standing next to each other, and the first thing I saw was not them, but the lights. I thought it was actually like some kind of weird giant spider or something with two giant, like glowing eyes. I was 4 years old, right? So one of them I would think they might have been telepathic. They read my mind, because one of them moved over to the side of the bed. I really felt so that I could see that they were not some kind of weird creature, but two separate beings, and they both had the exact same identical outfits on, and also the same kind of lighting systems. What they were used for, I don't know.
Yeah.
Transportation,
putting
people to sleep, working on people, whoever. When I think back on this, just to kind of make this perspective, they might have been working on me other nights. For work that I was going to do in the future, And I always felt, looking back on it years and decades later, that they wanted me to see them. Because they probably could have put me to sleep, or something like that, or kept me sleeping. Something woke me up, and I don't think they bumped into the bed. And so I think what happened was that maybe they just wanted me to look back decades later when I got into my work and remember that that I was having, somebody who was working on me, maybe fine-tuning me when I was really young, because they sure did not attack me. And that's what kept me at least in bed for, the 15, 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds before I went running out of the room and crying, and running into my mom's room, that I felt no attack. It was certainly not a reflection. For one thing, I got a great look at their faces. I got a great look at the outfits they were wearing, because the room was cracked open. Now, these lights were self-illuminating, meaning that if you've ever seen these round lights you stick on a wall and you press the button so that you can see the hall a little bit, there was kind of like that a little bit. They didn't have these things around in the early 60s, okay? That they didn't exist. And so what I'm saying is that it was not shining in my face. It was actually just illuminated itself. What these devices did, I did not know, but I did feel that they were devices, and they probably did more than one thing. Why I felt that way, I'm not sure.
So it wasn't
to see where they were going, because they weren't flashlights.
I want to try to get to the bottom of the connection between the aliens and your abilities as far as being able to detect and see spirits. There are theories now that maybe alien paranormal activity and ghost or spirit paranormal activity might be the same thing, have the same source, just manifesting in different ways. Do you think there's any connection there, first of all? But secondly, if not, do you think these aliens visited you with the intention of either A, taking advantage of your abilities to contact and connect with the spirit world, or maybe helping you enhance those abilities?
Looking back, at four, I can tell you that I did not know. But looking back, I can tell you that I've had many experiences since then we can go into, but what I'm saying is that looking back, I really believe that it was just simply an appearance. They simply wanted me to see that they were there. So when I started in with my work much later on in life, after I got to the Air Force and did studying and all that, that essentially this was kind of a lifelong project, JV, that essentially that they were there from an early age, and probably working on me when I was asleep, and just that night they wanted me to see them because they didn't do anything, besides I felt the reason that one of them moved over to the other side of the bed was to give me comfort, to let me know that it wasn't two giant eyes and that it actually was, I saw them clear. As I kind of rubbed my eyes and I could see clear, I realized that, they were not spirits. They were clearly like alien-type looking things, very interesting looking.
Right, but we have to go to break, so I just wanted to see if I can get a pinpoint answer on this. Do you think that they were either there to help you augment your abilities with the spirit world, or they were there to learn from them, or because of those abilities? Do you have any sense? And I know you were 4 years old at the time, but in retrospect, do they have anything to do, or was their visit anything to do with your abilities in being able to see and connect with the spirit world?
Yes, in retrospect, I would say that they were working on me and beginning to fine-tune me for work later on.
So you think they were helping massage your abilities?
Actual
altering them. Actually enhancing them? Altering you to have these abilities?
From day one. And so I was not a usual kid, as you know. I was already seeing spirits.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that I remember doing this kind of stuff in bits and pieces of past lives and all sorts of things. And
yeah.
So I think it was just kind of that they were there working on me and helping me, because I was not dealing with things very well, seeing spirits.
So do you think that Jeffrey,
they were making things happen at an early age?
Do you think they identified you in some way, recognizing that you had these innate abilities, and then they came to you, and maybe many, many times, as you said, while you were sleeping, that you weren't even aware of, and were helping you fine-tune these abilities for the rest of your life?
Absolutely.
That's
I had the feeling that they probably knew me.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. We're talking with Jeffrey Seelman tonight. His website, by the way, is Star Clear. Did I get that right, Jeffrey? Is it starclear.com?
That's correct, starclear.com.
Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, or if you're listening as a podcast, make sure you share it with your friends as well. The podcast version of the show is a great way to catch up on back episodes as well. There's a complete catalog. If you subscribe, you'll be able to find them, and we're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. All of the major podcast distribution points carry the Beyond Reality podcast version of the show. Tonight we're talking about demons, negative energies. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're talking about them with our guest, Jeffrey Seelman. He's a clearing expert, an exorcist, and an author. Jeffrey, as time goes on in your story here, at some point you either become exposed to or decide to seek out these demons or negative energies. When does that happen?
After I got out of the Air Force, JV, this would be 1982 or so, I started studying self-help books just to improve my life. I've been practicing meditation since 1976. And then I got into studying different kinds of major religions. That led to the history of spirit communication, the philosophies of good and evil. I don't know why I was doing it. I think I was reading a lot of science fiction and horror books at the time, and so I wanted the real stories that were happening. So I spent a lot of time in libraries, really reading a lot of reference books and studying. I mainly used my talents for staying out of trouble. I didn't talk about it still through high school, Air Force, all of that, afterwards, working. I just used it for my own purposes, which I think a lot of people do, just to they get intuition, ideas, business ideas, whatever, personal stuff. And so what happened was that in 1987, I was in the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee library, and all of a sudden I was someplace else, and I saw this person driving down the street in this old truck, and my vision was turned around. I believe that this was induced by my spirit guides. And I looked around, and I saw a face. It was not my face. But when I looked into the eyes, and I couldn't look away, I knew it was me, a much younger and a different time. And then, boom, the truck hit something, and all of a sudden I was inside of the body, and I remember hitting my head on something and went flying out the door. I went rolling down the road, and then all of a sudden I'm like 50 feet up in the air, and I'm looking down at my body, which was completely different. It was a different body, maybe 19 years old or so, and red hair, very different. I have dark hair, and I saw a smoking truck in the background. It hit a rock, a big one. And I knew right then and there, I said, I'm dead. There was no spirits going, hey, come on back, or follow me. There was no light. I saw everything very clearly. It was almost like shining a little bit. But I thought, I'm dead. And I knew it. And it was almost like a remembering. It wasn't like, oh no, I'm dead. It was like, I'm just a matter of fact, I'm dead again. I'm dead again. And the body was in the middle of the road. There were no other spirits around. My second feeling that came to me, JV, was I feel fine. And then all of a sudden I was back into the library. I was completely awake, no alcohol, no drugs. I've never had regression. I've never had hypnosis done to me. This was the first major experience I had. In 1990, I came into contact with some people that were doing Ouija boards. They actually have been doing them for 20 years. There were teachers, academics, a lawyer. One was a lawyer. The lead lady was a psychic. She was a well-known psychic at the time. And I got to know them and attended some of their sessions. And so that kind of interested me in a matter of speaking. And a couple of them had problems. Even though they had been involved in metaphysical things for decades, they had a couple of problems, one at a time, and in their apartments and homes. Like one was a practitioner, like a reader, and a psychic reader. And So this one guy who was a writer said to me, Jeffrey, I really think there's something in my apartment. Everybody's been trying to get rid of it, and will you take a crack at it? You've been studying this stuff, and the Ouija board has certainly said a lot of weird things about you, having these talents. Can you try it? I went over to this guy's apartment, and I just kind of, by intuition, I simply did some things, and I got rid of the problem. And so I went back to the group, and then the psychic reader kind of approached me on the side and said, I see a lot of clients at my home. Can you, and I feel like there's sometimes something negative in there. Can you come over and take a look at my place? And this is 1990. And I did. I went over there, and I got rid of the problem. And I wasn't even sure how to do it. I'd never studied how to do it. I simply kind of did it by almost intuition. And then basically what happened was that this group said to me, you really ought to take this to the public. You are really good. We tried so hard to get rid of these things, and we couldn't. And then they started, I was actually going out with the lead lady who, at the time, we started going out together, not that psychic, but a different one. She was actually very well known and did radio shows in Milwaukee, and I started going out with her, girlfriend and boyfriend, and essentially that she just knew I had some talent, and even the Ouija boards that they did, I'm not condoning Ouija board stuff, but they were very good at it, and after a while, I got to actually sit there and actually operate the planchette, which is that thing that goes across the board, of course, and spells out things. But and they also used me for protection. I seemed to be very good at that and sense things around me and could push things away if something negative stepped in, which occasionally it did. And so at that time, now we're talking, I still had practiced on a couple more people and successfully. 1992, I decided to put a small ad in a local newspaper here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I didn't expect any phone calls, and I don't think things came immediately. But what it did was it attracted the attention of the newspaper itself, and they actually had an article about me in there and the kind of work that I was at least trying to do. Somehow, the only metaphysical show, national show, that was ever on at the time from Paramount Studios, it was called Sightings. Right. And it was, everybody watched it. This was 1992 or so, 1993, somewhere in there. And they actually, what happened was, three young girls got a hold of me. They were in their 20s, young 20s, and they were living in a condo in a suburb of Milwaukee, and they got a hold of me from the ad, and I was also in the Yellow Pages for a little extra money, and then I thought I'd give it a try, and then they called me and said, we're waking up in bed with indentations in our bed next to us. We're taking a shower, and we see a shadow pass in front of the shower curtain. Something's in here, and it's scaring all of us. Three single women. Not saying they didn't have boyfriends, whatever, but it was just them living alone in this condo. And at that same time, strangely enough, Sightings called me up and said, so what do you do in all of this? And I said, and they said, what are you working on right now? Well, these three girls called me, and they want me to come out and clear their place. I've never met them, didn't know who they were, and I had an ad in the Yellow Pages, like I said, and so they said, well, maybe we could film this. And I said, well, okay, maybe. Give them a call. I don't know. And so they gave him a call, and one of them kind of begged out. One of them didn't want to be on television. The other two said, fine, come on out. So they flew out from Los Angeles, and then they actually said, you know what, we cannot wait for your cameras to come out from Los Angeles, from Hollywood. The problem is too bad. We're scheduled for Saturday. You're not going to come out until like Monday or something. And they said, we'll put you in a hotel, but you can't talk to Jeffrey. No more talking to Jeffrey. Everything's got to be, completely, above board, which I understand. And so I went out there. They put them in a hotel, and everybody came back for the filming. And essentially, besides some shots that were made for me walking up the stairs and doing whatever, they let me do my thing. And what I did was, I found that it was like a voyeur spirit, a spirit that would attack women, and that it was some kind of perverted spirit that was alive, probably doing the same thing. And now that it's dead, spirits are just people who don't have physical bodies. They have passed on, but they're just as intelligent and the same as us. And so I banished it. I kicked it out of the house, and I also cleared the house of as much negative energy as I could, because I could feel negative energy. And so if you can feel something and apply a certain energy to it, then that's what I did. And that's one of the ways that I got rid of this spirit. Now, you can't kill a spirit, but you can kick it out of a certain environment. That's what I did. And it was a long day. So if my very first experience with the media was the most famous and only paranormal show on television. It was nationwide, and it was just amazing. And wow. I was so terrified, but I still did it, and it never came back. And in sightings, talked to them, and they said, you know what? And of course, you can still see it on YouTube, and all that. And that episode, I think it's on my YouTube channel, or whatever. But it never came back, and it said so at the end of the show. It never came back, and the girls called me even a month later, 2 months later. It never came back, and that kind of led to other shows and me just doing more work. And so, in 1997, now I was working for a telecommunications company in the daytime, never thinking I would do any of this besides maybe once or twice a week. It was never a plan to do what I'm doing now. And so what happened was that I had actually was down at the lakefront, which is Lake Michigan here in Milwaukee, and I saw like these clouds start shimmering like a silver. And I heard this voice, say, we're here to help people, not me, people. And then I felt this wind come over me. There was no wind at the time, and I could just feel this feeling of being free. It was almost like freedom itself, not for me, but just them being around. It was like I could feel like there was more than one of them, like there's a whole bunch of them or something like that. And so what happened was, very shortly after that, I saw a spirit appear next to me. This is the first time that this had happened. I was walking down the street, and a spirit appeared next to me and said, "Do you want to join this group?" And I said, "Well, what group?" And they said, "Well, it's a group of spirits and aliens that essentially work on different planets that are not physical, or they're astral traveling, one of the two, meaning that, they're alive and they're partially there, or that they are spirits. And they are working all around the known universe, physical universe, helping people on different planets become free of negative things. And they said, we'll give you 3 days to make a decision. Just know this, Jeffrey. They said that you'll get no rewards from it, meaning no just job in heaven, no parades, no special treatment. You have to do it out of the goodness of your own heart. And so we'll give you 3 days. And so I thought about it, too. I did not say yes right away, because I thought, they said, this has got to be till the end of your life. I did not know why they said that, but they said this is kind of a lifetime contract thing. Why they said that, I don't know. This guy said that, I don't know. I'd never seen him before. And I heard it telepathically. He was not speaking to me out loud. Nobody would have seen him or heard him. And so I thought about it for the 3 days. The guy comes back, the spirit comes back. I'm taking a walk. I always lived by Lake Michigan while I was living in Milwaukee. I've lived in other places as well. But so I said, look, yes, I'll do it. I have these talents. I know I was born with psychic ability. I might as well help people. I like people, and if I can help in any way to make them feel better, I'll do it, and I don't care about the rewards. I don't expect them anyway. And so the next thing that happened was I saw about a day later or so, I was sitting in my bedroom, sober, and all that, and I was just, 1997 this was, so I was like about 37 years old, and I saw 100 spirits in these different uniforms, like I did before. They were not physical. They were like someplace else, but I saw them. And they were saying things, and I started to repeat them. They said, repeat this sort of, and I kind of did this oath type of thing. And then I was handed this really weird-looking sword that was not physical. And they said, put this, like, on your waist. But when I put it on my waist, it stuck to my waist. It didn't have, like, a sheath or anything to it. It just, like, it stuck to my spirit. And so that's kind of how it began. I joined this organization of essentially exorcists and helpers that were not only spirits but aliens. They were mixed in together, men and women. I mean, as far as I saw females and I saw males, and it was they were wearing all different kinds of outfits, and so. That's kind of how things really started. About not right around that time, I was in my apartment. I was reading a book, which was not metaphysical, and all of a sudden I was someplace else, and I saw this guy standing with long hair, black hair, and like a grass skirt, and he was small, and I thought, wow, that's me. I looked in his eyes and I thought, that's me. It looked nothing like me. But I saw in the eyes and I said, wow, that's me. And then somehow I ended up like jumping on his back. This happened it didn't happen in my physical body. It was like my consciousness was there. And he just kind of went through this like weird wormhole or something. He made some kind of design in the air. And all of a sudden he propelled forward, and I was like with him, like on his back, like literally like on his back, not my body. I was no longer conscious of my body. And then I saw a bunch of grass huts, and then men with carrying swords and wearing like these weird helmets, and they were killing people. And the spirit started crying, even though he couldn't be seen. And I was like, what's going on? And he kind of just looked at me and just made a shh sound. And then I just went, oh, this is terrible. And then before I knew it, I kind of hopped back on his back. Why, I don't know why that happened, but I guess it was to, connect with him. Back through this kind of wormhole type thing. It just took a few seconds. And then I was back in my bedroom. What happened out of that, which is so interesting, JV, is that now I was in two places at once. I was in my apartment, and I was also on the other side, what people call heaven, or what I call the non-physical universe. Call it what you like. But the idea was, I felt separated. I was at two places at once, and I didn't come back. Meaning that I never did come back. All of a sudden, I had one foot in each world, and I never got out of it. I went to my girlfriend 3 days later, terrified, and she was a well-known professional psychic who did media work, and well-known and very popular, and excellent too, by the way. And I said, I'm scared. I said, I thought at least I would go back to normal, and I didn't. I'm in two places at once now. I'm on this side and that side. In my mind, I can see that side. I can see what people call heaven. I can see the other side, and I can't stop it. How do I stop it? She goes, I don't know. And you know what, JV, I never did. I had to get used to it. It took me at least 3 or 4 months to get used to actually being on both sides. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. At the time, I was very unhappy about it. But on the positive side, I was able to see the other side and even travel over there at my will. So part of this event that took place, this very event, was actually to, broaden my horizons, stretch my perceptions, so that I not only could see the physical world and spirit sometimes, but now I had a vision of being in both worlds at once, so I could look at both of them, the other side and this side. Very uncomfortable for quite a while. I was very unhappy about it.
Jeffrey, when we start talking about negative entities, what are they and where do they come from?
Well, there's essentially two major kinds. There are people who have passed on that were negative and continue to do negative things. That is the most common thing that you'll find around here. There's also demonic spirits, which are the counterpart of angels. They're just simply angel, like as strong as an angel might be, how we perceive an angel, but they are very powerful and they do very negative things, and they're able to very quickly and strongly amplify our negative feelings to get us to do things that we would not normally do. And because they're very powerful, they have weapons, they have tools that are non-physical, they can do all sorts of things, and even when the wind is right, meaning there's a lot of emotional energy in the atmosphere, they can even affect physical reality to a certain degree. They cannot overturn cars, that's for the most part, but they can do small things, things flying off of walls and the things that people report. I've been doing this professionally for 30 years, and I've seen many things, but the most common thing is when we die, we simply drop our physical body. I'm not speaking religiously here. To me, this is science. Our physical body dies, but everything else, our personality, our emotional systems, and our psychological systems carry on exactly the same way. We are who we are. And so when people die, it's like, well, I'm still here. I still just don't have a physical body. But they generate their clothing from energy, and they generate how they look. And any spirit can do that. Now, most spirits are good. We don't have to worry about them. 80%, 85%. They don't bother people. But there's that 15%, just like here in the living world on Earth, that actually do. And they'll come around or maybe not really leave and go live with other spirits, but actually remain around. And even though we can't see them, we can feel them. And their goal is pretty much the same thing, to harass and frighten people in some way, or to get people to do things that they would not normally do. And it's actually quite easy to accomplish, that essentially if you're getting into an argument with your significant other or anybody, and one of these, a spirit or a demonic spirit, would step anywhere near you, such rage comes out of them. It's an energy. It's a real energy. Rage, anger actually has an energy, a corresponding energy to it. And they toss it at you, 1,000 miles an hour, and it amplifies everything. So in place of actually an argument, kind of like settling down, a person can do things, like maybe a moment of violence.
Yeah.
Or more than a moment. It's not true of every situation.
But it's like throwing gasoline onto a fire in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, JV. That's exactly their intent. And so many of my clients would like to know the reason why. Now, sometimes there are connections and reasons why, but very often I have to tell them, and I'm always honest with my clients, what I see and what I feel and the conclusions I've come to, that sometimes there's not always the reason. Sometimes it really is frivolous. They're just actually out to make people hurt each other. They do attack people in power. They attack businesses. They attack people that affect other people. I mean, I work with a lot of businesses because if they can take down a business somehow by creating a lot of anger, whipping up a lot of anger and getting things, making an atmosphere uncomfortable, a lot of people can lose their jobs. And unfortunately, it's not always revenge or something like that. Very often it's just because they can. They're very much like criminals here in the physical world. There's not always an explanation as to why they do things. They might, it's just to affect people and to get a feeling of ego and power.
Let me make sure
it's not always connection.
Yeah, let me make sure I understand. So what you're saying is that these negative entities, not demonic entities, but just negative spirits, they are the spirits of people who may have had that same type of personality during life. They were just bad people?
I would say about 75% of them were doing negative things and criminal things in their physical life. Like, say they were very perverted or something like that, or just very sadistic, that they would continue, because people don't change when they die.
Yeah. So if that's
they continue to do that stuff.
If that's the case,
and some of them are also people who are disappointed about what happens after they die, meaning that they don't wink out.
Yeah.
They're still there, and they actually are able to see their own lives completely, and also read the minds of everybody else. Our perceptions increase after we die, and some people don't like it, and they react to it badly.
So if someone like Charles Manson, who just died not long ago, would his spirit become potentially one of these negative entities?
He was clearly mentally ill, whether it was from drugs or whatever. He was not particularly popular when he was alive. But the idea was that, somebody like him is very mentally ill. I would think that it's very possible that he, might stay around, but you never know. He also might want to go on and change. You just never can tell.
Right.
But people who do really negative things, like very purposefully, and not just because of, huge amounts of drug use, but also just are criminals and maybe attack people, attack women, and are violent, may continue to try to affect people after they are dead. Demonic spirits are very powerful and very evolved.
Let's not go there yet.
And they may never have lived a physical life.
Yeah,
at least not for a long time.
Let's not go into the demonic stuff yet. I still want to understand these negative entities.
Sure.
You said they could attack businesses. Is this a personal vendetta? In other words, if I had someone, let's say I have a business and somehow I wronged somebody, and that person ends up passing away. Are you saying that spirit could become a negative entity and therefore come back at me in my business, or is it completely random?
It's more. I have found it's both, but it's usually more random. JV. When I go to businesses and help them out, what is going on is that sometimes it could be an employee's a spirit that's attacking a particular employee or a business owner or whatever, and it just simply goes around the office or the factory or wherever they're working, and tries to stir up emotions between people. And so the different ways of attacking a business. So it's not always just like revenge. Some people are angry, and they attract angry spirits. And so it's not really that hard to spread that kind of anger around, just like you have the angry employee at your office or workplace that kind of makes other people angry. A spirit can do the same thing, it just can't be seen. And so it can go around essentially shooting out this rage and anger feelings, and people react to it, and they don't know what they're reacting to. And it's not, the rule, but it does happen, and it happens more than we think.
One of our chat room members has a question. Mary Grace wants to know how you protect yourself against negative entities and demonic spirits when you work to remove them.
By strengthening our energy fields and creating different kinds of shields that have a known effect upon turning back negative emotional energies. And I go into that, and one of the things I recorded an audiobook in Chicago in 2013 called Power Protection. Besides being available in all the different things like your podcasting system, Amazon UK and Amazon, all that, iTunes, you can get a free copy of that on my website on the front page. And also some of my lessons. I put that out there because I did not create that book to make money. I created it to help people. It's sort of a workbook. The first chapter is all about me, 2 hours of my metaphysical history, everything you want to know about me, so I have a background there. And then chapter 2 is personal protection. It'll teach you through an audio, just listen to it, it'll teach you, any person, practical, scientific, and logical steps that you can take to create a stronger energy field and create a multi-layered protection system that will...
Wow, he just disappeared. We have fun with things just crapping out when it's least convenient. Anyway, sorry about that, but not beyond our control. We are back, but we don't have our guest, so this is our end of night tuck-in, I guess. We'll have to do it a little bit early. Just too bad because I had a lot of great questions left for our guest, Jeffrey Seelman. We'll just get him back on.
Beyond Reality Paranormal is hosted by J.V. Johnson and produced by Orion Palmer and Slick Eddie Edwards. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please consider supporting the program either through your podcast platform, click on the link in the description, or on Patreon at Joha Productions. If you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reality Paranormal or you have a recommendation for a guest, contact our producer, Slick Eddie Edwards. Eddie is spelled with a Y at slickeddieedwards@gmail.com.